Welcome to the Biz Bash podcast, where we make biz strategy a piece of cake. I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Cami, but you might know us better as Eliza Ann Calligraphy and Cami Monet. We want to help you, our fellow stationers, artists, and calligraphers, confidently build a profitable and personality-driven creative biz.
We're here to share our honest-to-goodness advice and actionable strategies for ambitious artists.
So put on your party hat, quit being a procrastinator gator, and let's get this party started.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Biz Birthday Bash podcast. Y'all, we have an amazing guest for you today, Randi Smith of Sugar Euphoria. It is about time that we had a cake baker and a confectionery artist here on the podcast with us. So Randi, welcome. We are so happy to have you this morning to learn so much from you.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here.
Yes, we are happy that you're going to be able to impart so much wisdom into our audience about cultivating a positive team environment. Y'all, that is what we are here talking about today. So let me read a little bio about Randi really quick, and then we'll get started with our questions for her. Randi Smith is an island girl who's passionate about celebrating life's big moments. She is the founder and lead designer at Sugar Euphoria, a boutique wedding cake and confectionery studio in North Carolina. As she navigates through the busyness of being an entrepreneur, cake designer, and mother, she faces many challenges, but her story is that of a woman fighting through burnout and working in the negative to having a profitable business. And if that's not inspiring, I don't know what is. So there's so much that we're going to be able to pick up from you today in this episode. So let's get started just kind of with the simple question of, tell us in your own words how you got started in this industry and what led you to this point.
Sure. So I grew up in Nassau, Bahamas, and I spent every single Sunday baking with my mom and my grandmother. So we would do things like, just little cookies, bars, brownies, pound cake, things like that. Super easy stuff. And I went off to school and didn't bake a single thing unless it was like bake or break cookies or something like that. Like I did not get in the kitchen much during undergrad. And so it wasn't until I was in grad school, all my friends had left Chapel Hill and they went to, exciting cities, and I was working as an HIV researcher. And I would come home after work and try to zone out, and I would zone out by watching Cake Boss. And so I would sit there and I'm like, man, if these big burly guys in New Jersey can make these beautiful cakes, surely I can do the same, right? Like I've been baking my whole life. How hard can it be? And it was actually a lot harder than it looked. But that's how I got started. I just dove right into it after binge watching Cake Boss.
I love that so much. Such inspiration from reality TV. And I feel like that's always how it goes, if we think something's simpler than it is. But the point is that you still were capable. You just had to go over some bumps along the way, I'm sure, to get to where you are. Mm-hmm. And you have been able to figure it out and build a successful business. So how long has it been at this point that you have been baking full time?
So I've been baking since 2012. So I'm coming up on the 10-year anniversary in like a week, maybe. I have to go back to, thank you. I have to go back to like my incorporation documents. I can never remember if it's April or May of 2012, but I know the 10-year birthday is coming up. So I'm going to do something to celebrate. But yeah, it's been a short 10 years, I would say. I feel like I can remember just starting out and like my first logo and first company name.
Mm-hmm. And look how far you come. It's always a good feeling.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, I do hope you do something extra special, throw a little party, maybe go out to a fancy dinner with your family or something. You got to do something to mark that milestone. It's a big deal.
Yeah. I hadn't planned like anything fun for Sugar Euphoria, but now I'm like, oh, I need to do like a giveaway and have like a big old dinner with my friends and family and celebrate this. Yeah, 10 years. Whoa.
Yeah. It's some of those like oversized gold balloons that say 10, make a little photo shoot.
Oh, okay. Yep. I'm about to plan that as soon as we get off the call. Thank
you.
Thank
you. All right. So at what point in your business did you first realize, I can't do all of this myself, I'm going to need help?
Ooh, so it was about 3 years in, I would say. So I was baking from home. We had a little townhouse when we first got married, my husband and I was baking from home. And I quickly outgrew that space, and I found myself pregnant with our first daughter. And I was like, wow, growing a new baby, growing this business, this is not sustainable here. And with
Yeah.
me doing this by myself, because we had really taken off at that point. And so I initially reached out to a cupcake shop and said, hey, can I come in super early in the morning before you get there and start baking? And they said yes. Surprisingly, they said yes. They're like, come on in.
Wow. That's
Yep.
awesome.
At like 3:30 in the morning, here's the key. You can go and bake. And, I went out there by myself for a few times and I was like, ooh, this is not going to work. Like, I'm getting bigger and bigger by the day and the orders are still rolling in. And that's when I realized that I needed somebody to help me, and not so much with like the front end marketing sales, but I really needed another set of hands in the kitchen with me, whipping the buttercream and filling the cakes and doing that crumb coating. And then I could kind of come in and finish off the design. But it was pretty early on that I said, ooh, I can no longer do this by myself.
Yeah, exactly. There's certain things in your business that only you can do, that you have the special touch. But there are other things, like you said, you were able to recognize those tasks of what is something I can hand off. And I think the earlier we realize this, the better. So I'm glad that you realized it as quick as you did. Tell us, what do you think is important to put in a job listing, and what characteristics do you look for when hiring someone?
So I think it's really important to be as upfront and transparent as possible when putting out a listing. I think it's definitely beneficial, instead of like for a baker to just be like, hey, looking for a cake designer. And that's it. Like,
Yeah.
well,
Like, what does that mean?
What does that mean? What does the daily task look like? So I truly believe in putting out, like, maybe not in the initial call for help, but definitely early on in the process to say, your responsibilities will include helping with the cleaning, because I think people come in there like, I'm going to decorate the cake and at 5:00 I'm out of here. And I'm like, no, we have to clean. Something like that, something like maintaining the workspace. So whether that's lifting the ingredients and being transparent about that, like, our bags of flour, I try not to get the 50-pound bags, but definitely like you'll have to lift 25-pound bags of flour, and you'll also have to lift cakes that are in excess of 50 pounds. This we get in super early in the morning, and sometimes we end well into the night, depending on the workflow and the volume. And, sometimes mistakes happen and we have to start all over, and I also believe in putting out the salary range. I don't know about other folks out there, but I know when I was looking for jobs, everything looks so good. And then you get to the end and it's like, wait, how much are you offering?
Right.
Like, that's not enough. So being transparent with the expectations, with the salary, and then also the skill set that you're looking for, because I can put out a call for a cake designer and maybe they've just, done it a few times for friends and family, but saying, we're looking for somebody with X amount of years of experience. Maybe they have these licenses like Safe Serve or a culinary degree. And that's not for everybody, but, those are just some of the examples of things to put in a listing. Definitely the person's experience and qualifications. And then I think once you put all of that together and you put it out front there for everybody to see, then it definitely helps you weed out folks from the very beginning so that you don't waste everybody's time.
Yes, exactly. Because at the beginning, it's all about meeting that checklist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have my checklist? And then going forward, it's a little bit about seeing compatibility, character,
Exactly.
problem solving. You get to the interview stage. So once you get there, what are things that you're kind of keeping an eye out for when you finally get someone on the phone or meet them in person?
Oh, that's such a good question. So a few things that I look for, right? Compatibility is a big one. I know, like, first impressions, and especially like when you're on an interview, like people can be nervous. So that's definitely understandable. Like, you're never looking for people to be perfect, but definitely looking for somebody who can explain about a time when they were under pressure, under the gun, trying to complete something and how they handled it. Sometimes it is high pressure work that we're doing. So much can, there's so many variables that go into baking. So how do you handle an instance like that? What do you do when you make a mistake? Is it something that we try to pass off blame for, or do we need to, accept that we made a mistake, let your team know, and then we can go and rally around and correct that. Because, we're not perfect, and cake design is very organic. It's not, some of it is an exact science, but a lot of it is being creative. And sometimes you take a creative risk and you make a mistake.
Yeah,
I do it all the time. So yeah, how can we bounce back from that? Those are sort of the things, just like people's temperament, personality. And I personally don't look for somebody who's exactly like me. I think that actually leads to a lot more tension than folks realize, but definitely somebody I think that would gel well with myself and then everybody else who works with us.
Yeah, I think people often, to go exactly to what you said there about finding someone a little different than you actually need somebody who can maybe see things differently. It's a benefit to the environment when people approach something from a different perspective, because if you're too similar, then you see similarities and then you also disagree in the same way too.
Yeah.
and bump heads and it's kind of funny. I feel like there's that dynamic in families, with parents and with their children. Like when your child's similar to you're similar to a parent, you actually tend to butt heads with them more.
Right. Yep.
I think than the parent who differs more. There's more of the complementary aspects there. So that's really helpful for people to think about. So at the beginning, when people are trying to kind of discern what they need help with in their business, how do they go about discerning what tasks they need the most help with, as well as how to discern if they need full-time or part-time help? Are there any tips you can give us, like our audience, things that they should be thinking about?
Yeah. So I would say I'm big on outsourcing. I not only outsource in business, but I outsource in our family life as well. So for me, what I like to do is I like to sit down with a list and just run through, what do I have to do every day? What are the major tasks? What are the recurring tasks that I have to do? And what are those one-off tasks that can sometimes throw everything off?
Yep.
And after you've been in business a while, you can kind of identify those. But I like to just write them down, and then I kind of go back and categorize them. What do I really love to do and have time to do? What do I love to do? But, maybe it's not always a priority for me. What are the things that I really dislike doing?
Yes.
For me, maybe it's unwrapping the butter and cutting it up, because I don't like that buttery feeling on my hands. So, I'm like, okay, so now I know that I need somebody to prep the buttercream, fill and frost the cakes. So yeah, I just like to identify all of those different categories and kind of prioritize them in a way. So I have all different matrices. I don't know what that word is, but yeah. So I like to write it all down and then go back and regroup them and then figure out what I can pass off to people. And sometimes it's things that I love to do, but I just don't really have time to do.
Yes, I know. I think that's the hardest thing for people to let go of, actually. It's easy to let go of the things you hate, like the butter, or maybe it's packing orders, whatever it is that that you really hate and dislike. It's harder to let go of the things that you love, because then you're even pickier, I think, about how those are done too. You're like, well, I love that and I could do that. And so you kind of hold it close to yourself, close to your heart, when really you need to surrender it to let somebody help you.
Yep. Yeah. And then especially when you grow in a team, then you have folks that come in the door and you realize, they're actually a lot better than I am, even though I love to do it. It would benefit the entire team if I handed this task off to somebody. Is that one person better at making sugar flowers than I am? Then you know what? You are in charge of prepping the sugar flowers for the upcoming orders, because I love sugar flowers. It's delicate, dainty work, but it's also very time consuming. And I'm like, oh, I could actually be over here getting ready for the accountant and tax time, the stuff that only I can do, and then letting them do that work. So while I will miss sugar flowers, the cakes are better for it and the business is better for it if I release that to somebody on the team.
Yes, because while you have been spending so much time doing all the tasks in your business and only a small section of that is sugar flowers, you might bring somebody in who has been doing sugar flowers for their full-time position for another baker for a while.
Right.
So they actually outweigh you in hours of experience, which is kind of funny how that works out.
It is. Yeah. Especially when you've been spreading yourself thin. I know a lot of people start out and they have to do everything to keep their business running. But that prioritization matrix and that love-hate matrix, I think if they go hand in hand, you'll definitely be able to identify the best places to outsource.
Agreed. All right. So the next question is, because obviously you have multiple people working for you at this point. I mean, we're talking about cultivating a positive team environment. So what expectations did you set up front with your employees, and how did you develop the culture within your business to keep it positive and a place that everyone wanted to come work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have folks not just in the bakery part of the business, but we also have ladies that work on like the sales and marketing side. So you have two distinct teams under Sugar Euphoria. You have, social media marketing. Some of them are contractors. Some of that work I outsource, and some of them work directly with me. And then, that's like one culture over there. And then you have the people that are in the kitchen all the time. So for the folks that are more on the business side, for us, we really live in project management software. So like in Asana, stuff like that, making sure that all the tasks are out there and that we're communicating. So one thing that I put up front is, there's no issue that's too small for you to reach out to me about, especially when we're getting started. Because I'd rather folks ask me questions and get in the rhythm than to try to take it on themselves and, just kind of take us down a path that we don't want to go down and generate issues that were avoidable. So for those folks, it's really, let's get all of our documentation together. Let's follow this structure. Let's really dig into all of the features in this software. And because we're not all together, so we're not in the same space. So it's really important that we focus on being big on communication. So that's the people on that side of the house.
Yes.
And then you have the people that are actually creating the cakes. So for us, it's always being as efficient as possible. And I let them know up front, we need to get these cakes out the door as efficiently as possible without sacrificing on the quality and the style. Because we do charge we do charge a labor fee. So on top of every order, we determine how long is it going to take us to actually create this cake. And then we add an additional labor fee onto that. So it's outside of the ingredients and, the overhead. It's also, okay, we have this design aspect, but we don't want to take so long that we're charging people so much money for a cake because that'll turn them away. But we also just don't want to do it so quickly to maximize, the money that we've made on those labor hours that we're giving them a sloppy cake. So so the expectation is that they come in and they hit the ground running every day. We sit down, we talk about the orders, what's coming up, how far ahead can we plan and get ready? And then it's off to the races. But then we also, foster a very, I guess, more like a lighthearted culture over there. We're playing music, we're talking, we're laughing. But then we're also big on the collaboration as we go through every order that goes out the door as well. So, we have folks that bake, we have folks that fill. And then when it comes to decorating, then, again, like I mentioned earlier, you have people with different strong suits. So one person might be better at applying fondant. Somebody may be better at sugar flowers. And so now you have a fondant cake that needs sugar flowers. So then they get to collaborate on that particular cake. Maybe somebody's better at script. They have a better script and they can write on the top of the cake after somebody's decorated the whole thing. So it's definitely a collaborative effort and not one person, from start to finish.
Yes. And you mentioned something so important earlier, like a couple things that I kind of picked up from while you were talking about the differences between teams and how you figure out who's going to do what. The first one was that you had mentioned documentation. I think that's so important for a business to just have information on the back end of how the business works, right? Like if so-and-so's not in this role, somebody else is going to be taking it and they need to know what to do. They need to know what the standards are. It's kind of like a little bit of like an employee guidebook, if you will, with a little bit of help in there. It sounds boring because it kind of is boring, but it's necessary. My husband does a lot of documentation stuff for his work as a data analyst, but the same things kind of apply. And he always gripes. He's like, oh, the documentation for this process is so bad. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. And as business owners, even in the creative space, we can be creating our own documentation, which is basically guidelines for what has to happen in the business.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing you had mentioned is playing to people's strengths. And that's so important too, because there have been times where maybe you might hire somebody, and you can agree with me or not agree with me on this if you want, Randi, where you hire them to do something specific, but then you realize that they're good at that, but they're actually also way better at like ABC over here.
Mm-hmm.
So trying to play to their strengths as an employee too, as they grow within your team, rather than continuing to stick people with something that they might not thrive off of. There's a healthy balance. There's things that have to get done, but then there's things that you can disperse to the people who maybe love them the most and kind of keep everyone happy.
Right. Yeah. And then I think another important thing is if you're realizing that somebody's better suited for a task and you want to move them over there, that you have like a succession plan for bringing somebody in to do what they were doing before.
Yes.
Yeah. Because then if you don't, then you may find yourself going back to that role of doing the work that you've previously outsourced to somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Making sure everything is covered, or saying, you know what, you can do a little bit of this, but we still need you to also do some of that too. While we figure out what's coming up next.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so probably the funnest question of the interview, but also not fun. The best way to manage conflict in a work environment, and have you had any situations that need to be remedied, and what have you had to do?
Oh, yeah. So I'm going to tackle the second part of that question. So really early on when I went into the first bakery, I had an assistant. It was just the two of us working side by side. And over time, I thought we had a good relationship. And I asked if I was going on maternity leave. And I said, do you want to come in as a partner in this business? You know, I think we work really well together. And I'm definitely looking for somebody that I can trust to kind of take the lead on this while I'm on maternity leave. And she declined, which was definitely her prerogative. But despite turning down the role, she then started acting as if she carried a lot more decision-making power than she actually did as an assistant. Like, it would have been fine if she had accepted the role as a partner. Then we would have been able to collaborate and determine what the best steps were for us moving forward. Mm-hmm. But she said no, and then acted, you know, as a partner and almost a little bit as my boss.
Oh,
yeah. So then I was like, because I had to kind of take a step back as I was getting closer to my due date. And so I kept thinking, like, this doesn't feel right anymore. This is starting to feel icky. Like, I'm dreading coming into work and I'm the owner of this business. Just you know, because of the attitude and the personality clash and kind of that authoritative role that she was taking on without being an authority or like a managing partner in the business. So we had a few discussions about it. You know, I'd let her know how I was feeling and said, you know, it seems like you definitely want to take on more ownership in the way this company is moving forward. And if you do, the offer is still standing. But if you are deciding to stay as an assistant, then we need to go back to the parameters that we set out when you were hired.
Yeah.
And she agreed. And then the behavior just kept continuing. We kept having conversations about it, even brought in a mediator. And then, you know, when I saw that we weren't moving forward, then we just had to cut ties. And so it's not fun, but I definitely thought it was necessary because I felt like the culture of the company was getting to be a little bit toxic and the other folks were kind of feeling it too. So it was definitely yucky. So we went through having those frank, honest conversations about it. That was like the first step in trying to resolve the conflict. Second, we brought in an outside party to help us hash it out. And then when that didn't work, we just had to part ways.
Yep. And because you still were full owner,
yeah,
that made it a little easier, right?
Right.
It's like, in a way, that did work out in the end. And because that would have been just as horrible if she had become a partner, but then there also was kind of the icky feeling, you know?
Yep.
You're like, ooh, that, you know, maybe gave me a little bit of a glimpse of what could have been, and maybe we kind of dodged a bullet.
Right. Yeah. And
that seems to happen.
It tends to happen. In hindsight, it was definitely the best thing for the company. It didn't feel like it at the time, but I'm glad we went and parted ways. And, you know, it wasn't like, it was pretty amicable.
Yeah, that's good. That's
after
good.
all of it. But now when conflicts arise, you know, whether that's, you know, just a personality clash or a lack of communication on somebody's part or a mistake that's made, then I just find the time to talk to the person one-on-one. I'm not big on berating people in front of the rest of the team.
Yes, definitely not.
I am not big on that.
You're not Gordon Ramsay. None of
Right,
us are.
exactly. And it just takes me back to going to parochial school and like people getting in trouble in assembly. Like that's not fun.
No.
And it does not cause a positive behavior change. So we just scheduled some sit downs to kind of figure out what was going on, you know, what the exact issue was and what we can do to fix it moving forward. So sometimes it's just a conversation. And then sometimes I'm like, oh, back to like the handbook, you know, like what do we need to do here so that everybody knows if this situation arises, what's the best course of action? What's our protocol here?
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. Especially when it's happening, not with you, but it's happening between other employees.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be a way to follow that every time. So, okay, another not so fun question. We know that you've had to part ways with someone before, but have you had to fire a staff member? And what did that look like? My dad has always said, hire slow, fire fast. It's not fun, but sometimes it's necessary. So what steps do you need to take, I guess, if you do get to that point?
Yeah. So I should have heard that from your dad a lot earlier in the business because I was definitely the type of boss like, we can keep fixing it. Let's just put a Band-Aid on it and we can move forward.
Mm-hmm.
But even when I was going through that, I'm also big on documentation. And I have a friend, like a person on my team who also works in HR. And so she's always telling me, you know, make sure you document it. Even if it was a positive resolution, just make sure that you're documenting what occurred, what the steps are to fix it, what's the next course of action if it happens again. And then I always bring in my friend who's in HR, the person I'm talking about. I always bring her in to do the final steps of letting somebody go. So I'll come in, talk to them about, you know, the issues that we've had, the way that we've tried to remedy it, where we are moving forward and, you know, highlighting what has not happened, what hasn't changed, or what's continued to happen. And then I bring her in to do the rest of it. It's
Okay.
like the signing the forms and all the more legal stuff.
Yes.
And I'm
exactly.
like, I don't really, you know, my lawyers looked at over it. Everybody's vetted it, like our hiring forms, our employment agreements, all that stuff, but then also like our termination forms.
Yes. Oh, employment agreement. Such a good thing to have if you're going to be hiring multiple people. And was that something that you had created with a lawyer from the very beginning, like when you hired your first person?
Not when I hired my first person. So when I hired my first person and then we eventually parted ways, I just realized, you don't have all of this together, Randi. Like a lot of this is very loose.
Yeah.
Like
gotta tighten it up, button it up a bit.
You just have to button it up. Like you downloaded the template offline, didn't have anybody vet it, don't know if this will hold up in a court of law. And so, like I said, luckily we parted ways on somewhat good terms, but then moving forward, I was like, I do not want to go through this again of a kind of like, I feel, you know, and you didn't do this. I'm like, nope, document it. What happened? What transpired? What did the person say? What did I say in response? And then we have now reached like 3 strikes, and it's best if we release a person from our team. And yeah, now everything's all buttoned up.
Yeah.
For the laws of North Carolina. And not some like random file that I found online.
Right. Yeah. Something from like New Mexico or Arizona is not going to help you.
It's not going to help me. It's not.
Okay. Back to more of like some of the fun questions. What can you do as a boss to ensure that people enjoy coming to work?
Oh, man. So I always like to, well, there are a few things we do, but I love playing music in the mornings. I do it with my kids. I do it with the team. So there's always something playing in the background when folks come in. I think it gets people pumped for the day. And usually it's a lot of random stuff, mainly like 90s music, early 2000s
Yeah.
from like every genre. So people like, I don't know what's coming on today. This is very random, but it's also very fun.
Yes.
So that's one thing I like to do to get people excited in the morning. And then one thing that I've taken from my corporate life is just doing like little stand-ups with folks in the morning, like get the whole team together and we talk about what we have going on for the day. I talk to them about what I have going on for the day. And so I think that makes people feel like they're a part of a larger team. And it gives us some structure too. And I think people really appreciate that they know what's happening with their colleagues and with their supervisors so that they don't feel like they're left in the dark and they're also invested in what we have going on and vice versa. So I think that really makes it fun. And then we love celebrating stuff, right? Like we're in the business of being a part of other folks' celebrations, whether it's weddings, birthdays, anniversaries. So I just love to celebrate my team.
Yes, I think the idea of celebration is so important. I mean, first of all, your business model is based on celebration for weddings. So,
Right.
of course, you want to bring that magic to your own employees as well. And people do like being, depending on the personality type, but people really do like being at least recognized in one way or the other. And so I think that's a great tip for people. So, what does your role as a leader of the team look like today? Are you still dictating all of the tasks that are happening, or is there someone who works with you side by side who's maybe doing a little bit more of like bakery management, if you will? I'm curious to know what your role is within the business at this time.
So right now I am mainly, I would say sales. I think I'm a little bit more forward facing than I am in the nitty gritty of the everyday work. So that looks like doing the cake tastings, the consultations, meeting with the couples and their planners, and then working with our marketing team to generate more sales. But I'm
Okay.
also, yeah. And then I'm also, doing the ordering of the supplies. So I'm still taking on some of that bakery management. So I would say I'm sales lead and I'm bakery manager
Okay.
and
Yeah.
creative director because I still do the sketching. And then like I mentioned earlier, we have our folks who are actually in the kitchen doing the baking and the decorating. And then, we have the people who are doing the social media management, blogging, Pinterest, and all that fun stuff on that side.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up that you do the drawing, because one of my favorite photos on your website is of you drawing a cake. I just think it's so special and such a personal touch. It lets people know that you're deeply involved and invested. So yeah, that was an image that I had noticed right away. So it's really
Oh,
cool that you're still the one doing it.
thank you. I love it. I love that part. I love the creative part of cake. So it's still fun to be, the one that people greet when they come in. And I love talking about weddings. I don't think I'll ever tire of it. So
Good.
yeah, sitting down and be like, I want to see your Pinterest board and show me the swatches of your linens and the attendance dresses. What flowers are you using? I want to talk about all of it. And then I'm like, all right, now we can talk about cake.
Yes, now we can talk about it. All right. So to wrap up our episode for the day, our time has already gone so quickly.
I know.
I know it flies by when you get in the groove and you're chatting and answering questions. Could you let our audience know what your intentions are for the remainder of 2022? We always like hearing about people's goals. And then, of course, we would like to hear all the places people can find you, like your website and social media.
Sure. So my big goal for 2022 is to get a new spot for Sugar Euphoria. We are currently looking at a couple spaces that are in excess of 4,000 square feet. So it's going to be a big undertaking, but we definitely need more space for consultations, classes, and a kitchen. So that is our big goal for 2022. So everything we do is working towards that move and that upfit. So it may,
Okay.
with construction the way it's going, it may be Q1 of 2023, but we're hoping for the end of 2022.
Okay. Makes sense. I wish you the best of luck in that endeavor. I know a lot goes into finding the right space. And maybe you can come back sometime and talk all about finding a space for your business.
Oh my goodness. And we can talk about the other fun, not so fun things of construction and upfitting and leases.
Yes, exactly. That would be a great one. So I'm going to keep that in mind and make a note of it. And then maybe we could have you back for round 2. Okay, so social media and websites, don't forget.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Yes.
So you guys can find me on pretty much every single social media platform at Sugar Euphoria. So at Sugar Euphoria on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest. Oh, and TikTok. I'm getting into TikTok. And then our website is www.sugareuphoria.com.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Brandy. If you guys loved listening to this episode, please make sure that you take a screenshot while you're listening, whatever platform you're listening on, and tag us at Biz Birthday Bash as well as Randi over at Sugar Euphoria to let us know that you're listening and that you love it. The other thing you can do is leave us a rating and a review on iTunes. You can do a written review on Spotify. You can give us 5 stars, please, pretty please, so that other people can find us and listen to us and hopefully gain some knowledge from our amazing guests and episodes that we have. If you do have questions that you would like me and Cami to answer in the future, you can go to bizbirthdaybash.com/Q&Cake. And that's where you can fill out the form to submit a question that hopefully would be read and answered on one of our Q&Cake episodes. So thank you again, Randi, for being here today. It has been such a pleasure. I have loved every minute.
Thank you. This was so much fun. And I definitely want to come back.
Okay. Yes. Good. I'm going to make a note, and then I'll let your podcast manager, I'll let her know too. So we'll try to sneak something in there again, especially once this adventure of finding your new space kind of wraps up. So I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, Randi. And thank you everyone for tuning in and listening. We love you guys so much. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey guys, we just wanted to hop in and talk about one of our amazing resources, the A to Z directory. All of us have thought at some point, how did she do that or how did she make that? And maybe you don't know where to start or how the heck to produce this amazing product you've dreamt up.
Well, the A to Z directory is the missing puzzle piece in your biz, you guys, seriously. So it's built in the form of a yearly membership, and it's your one-stop shop for finding suppliers and vendors for all the things. Literally where to print everything from custom invitations, greeting cards, mugs, koozies, acrylic printing, letterpress, custom ribbon. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And it literally goes from A to Z. From acrylic printers to zipper pouches, we have it in the A to Z directory.
We want to help all of you search less and create more with this list of 300 plus vendors and suppliers. Don't worry, they're very organized. It's not going to be overwhelming and confusing when you join. And this membership also includes access to a private Facebook community. It's incredibly active and involved. And if you need a question answered fast, that is definitely the place to go.
Yeah, our Facebook group really is the best. You guys, everyone is so helpful in there. And we're in there too, answering questions you guys might have. So it's a great way to get access to us and ask us things without sliding into our DMs. So we're more likely to answer you in the Facebook group, just saying. Anyway, also in the Facebook group, this is new for 2020 and we're really excited about it. We are hosting monthly Power Hour Q&A sessions that are live, and these are only available to our A to Z directory members. So you can hop in with us live and ask us all your burning questions in real time and just hang out with us every month. And we do these at different times so you can actually be there live, and the replays are always available in the Facebook group for members.
This resource is priced at $147 a year, which honestly is extremely affordable and is full of so many benefits, such as exclusive vendor coupons for members only. And we would love to have you guys join. Seriously, it's kind of like our family and our tribe. So visit bizbirthdaybash.com/directory to sign up today and use coupon code podcast2020 to receive $20 off your first year. That's podcast, all caps, 2020 for $20 off your first year.
We can't wait to see you in the Facebook group.